Welcome to the exciting rebirth of Superstar, featuring choose your membership rate as low as just $3 a month. At Superstar, you get expanded, exclusive video scopes each and every week, unlimited access to special horoscopes, class passes for Synchronicity University, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space. I look forward to meeting you there. Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of January 8, 2023. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. It is a remarkable astrological week, without a doubt. Big moves happening in the sky now, and this is massive. It does represent one of the most important moments of 2023, happening so soon as we have started a brand new year. And that is that on Thursday, Mars, having been retrograde since just before Halloween, will finally go direct. Now, if you think back, it was in the first days of September that Mars went into shadow. And what that means is Mars began to walk a path that he would eventually retrograde over. And as I said, the retrograde started before Halloween. And as Mars has been retrograde, traveling backwards from our perspective since then, it's this energy in the sign of Gemini, in the sign of mind, that has invited us to look within and not necessarily act impulsively. There's a lot of wisdom to any given Mars placement, but I was actually contemplating how I think, why is it that the universe has these retrogrades take place and for the time span that they do? In the case of Mars, it is Mars that will spend, about every year and a half or so, will go into a retrograde cycle, meaning begin shadow, then go retro, and then the shadow direct happens. That's the third go over the same pathway in the sky. And why is this? Well, I think that this is deeply connected to an understanding of where it is that our own survival instinct kicked in, and to understand more deeply our own motivations. Now, the thing is, in life, you can't always be looking back, of course. You don't want to always feel like you're doing this work, but not necessarily moving forward. The chart is living. And even if you have lots of retrogrades in your chart, that is as fortunate as someone who doesn't have them. And I think the great fortune of retrogrades is they are about self-honesty. They are about contemplation, and they invite us to look at this energy, which represents a part of ourselves, and to consider how it is that we are living it and using it, and if we're doing so wisely. It is only through contemplation that we're able to cultivate a meaningful wisdom. It is only through cultivation of that wisdom that we get to consciously decide whom it is that we are going to be. Think about with Mars, right? The world is filled with people, you come across them from time to time, I'm sure, who don't take that moment. Sometimes all it needs is a split second. And we see this in wider culture, for example, but people who have a stimuli and immediately they respond, whether it's through words or actions or deed, or, maybe they get upset about something and it accelerates really quickly. Why is that? It's normally because that Mars is not being tapped into consciously. And so they're just kind of reacting. Even if the current situation has nothing to do with the root of the reaction itself. It is when we take that moment of contemplation that we're able to gain so much. And literally all it takes sometimes is less than a second. And that's where we get to decide who we are and the best course of action for us. Collectively, we've been doing that. We've been looking that much more deeply at how it is that we communicate, what we're talking about as a collective, but also The sign of Gemini has to do with media, social media, traditional media as well. And we've seen a lot of activity happen on that front, right? I mean, I think about how this whole Elon Musk Twitter thing really started with Mars in Gemini. Even though the motions were set in place beforehand, it is with Mars in Gemini that things really accelerated and he had to take over. He couldn't get out of the legal deal. And as a collective, we've sort of been watching, but also trying to figure out, what is this going to mean? Not only for that specific platform, but also for the collective as well. What is it that we are so passionate about that we have to say it, and why? Why is that? And is it that there's only certain things, when said, that actually represent this sense of freedom? There's a range of expression that can take place, but it has been this larger Mars retrograde season that's invited us to look at that a little bit more deeply, to contemplate that a little bit more deeply, collectively and personally. And now here we are. Mars goes direct, and Mars goes direct while having a conversation of supreme harmony with Venus, and Venus is in the sign of Aquarius. Now, the trine between Venus and Mars perfects on Monday, so just a couple days earlier, but with Mars at the height of its power, standing still in the sky, as close to the Earth as he is going to get, this becomes a symbol of how it is we're understanding this energy. And I feel like the fact that Mars is trine Venus is a really good sign for how it is that we might end up using that energy in a way that is of a higher understanding, a higher consciousness, a more elevated perspective. It is thanks to that particular Mars trining Venus that we will have a sense of healthy detachment. And really, that split second requires that. It requires a sense of healthy detachment, because it's in those moments that we decide who we are. And it's in those moments that we can choose to operate from a more elevated self, if only so that we get to affirm that we are living from a place that allows us to magnify even more and create momentum even more, that is rooted in self-respect. One of my spiritual teachers, I remember so long ago, she said something to me and it has always stuck with me. She said, it's very hard for her to feel good about who she is and to move through the world feeling good about herself if she is not being nice to other people. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do what other people say, that you'd be a doormat. Absolutely not. That's sort of the opposite of what she was saying here. What she was saying here is that there are ways to interact with the world that are affirming, that bring gratitude to the moment. And people feel that from you. And when they feel that from you, when they feel gratitude, they feel respect, they feel love. And that is a very different way of being, as opposed to the opposite. Those feelings of entitlement, of demand, ultimately arise from a place of insecurity and inferiority. And that doesn't make people around us feel very good. But more importantly, it doesn't make you feel good to live that way. It's hard to respect yourself when you live that way. I think this is part of why, very famously, they say, if you are getting to know somebody, you're out on a date with them, watch how they treat the waiter. Watch how they treat people that they, in their minds, have considered not of equal status to them. Of course, that's all an illusion, right? We're all equal. I mean, I'm so passionately and adamantly for that. But when you watch people, right, how are they? Where it comes to understanding power dynamics and power differences. And it is those people that are nice to everybody that have a way of affirming that they feel good about themselves. I'm also reminded of, conversations I've had over the years with different people. I've had a chance to meet a lot of people who, are famous, and sometimes people who are really famous. A couple of superstars I've met in my life as well. And it's so fascinating to watch people who have achieved some pinnacle. They set out, they have a goal, they see it through, they acted from that place, and it came together. They are often described as really nice to everybody. But the people who maybe haven't done that, but they've been on a path, you can tell if some part of them is not satisfied, or some part of them thinks that they are pretending success. Because they tend to really not be nice to people. And we see this in all kinds of ways. And this is an observation that I've shared with others, and they also have had similar experiences as well. And I think that's also part of Mars, especially in the sign of Gemini, a sign that has to do with the younger part of us, the learning part of us. Mars now, stationary direct, is going to invite us to look at how it is that we actually are, how we react, how we behave in those spontaneous moments as we move through the world, and perhaps where it is that some of those reactions, conditionings, where is it that they came from a place that became rooted way back in the day, way before, as children. It gives us a chance to look at it again and to look at it more deeply. See, some of these conditionings may arise from our childhood hurts, right? That part of us when we were a child that maybe didn't feel worthy. Our worthiness was not affirmed the way that we might have needed. But we're not children anymore. Chances are, if you're watching this, maybe you got your kid with you. I know that sometimes people do send me photos of how their children are watching me with them. Shout out to Nicole Garceau, right? You've seen her on my channel before. She did that. That's how I really first got to know her online. And so that's lovely, but really, who's actively watching and contemplating what I'm saying? Not necessarily a grade school child. And so we are not children anymore. And there's something that actually is so empowered about that, because it ensures that we can choose not to live from the place of those experiences that might have caused us pain, that set certain responses in motion. We can choose different responses, and sometimes it takes practice to really have them set in as patterns, but we can get there. Right about now, it is that energy of Aquarius, Venus in Aquarius, that's going to encourage us to elevate, to have enough love for ourselves, but also for each other, for humanity. Again, it's very hard to feel good about yourself if you're not being good to other people, or at least have a measure of some decency and respect as you interact with others. It makes it that much more easier to cultivate those qualities within oneself. I think that this trine is going to work so well to our advantage. It's going to also help us to intellectualize our own experiences, especially the more chaotic ones. As I was looking at Mars direct, I was thinking about mythologies around Mars. And of course, we often think of Mars as impulsive. He was often depicted that way, especially in his youth. When we look at Greek myth, he could really, just let arrows fly. He would hurt other people in the process. For example, he hurt Chiron in the process of just letting one of those arrows fly willy-nilly. But we also see myths that demonstrate that he learned from that. He realized that that wasn't who he wanted to be. He cultivated an active awareness of himself so that he could appreciate how powerful he was, but also direct it strategically and with wisdom. And when he did that, that's truly when he was able to shine as this example, this deity of strength and power and really excellence, especially excellence where it came to things like athletics, where it came to war. I had the great pleasure of going to ancient Greece. I think this is the third time in a few months that I'm talking about it, but I'll just very quickly say there's a part of sort of in Athens near the Parthenon that you actually get to see sort of archaeological zones and ruins. And there's one area where it was a gymnasium. And they had an altar to Ares there. It's not there anymore, but it's sort of demarcated, so you know that that's where it was. And yes, the ancient Greeks would have an altar there to Ares as part of being in a gym and understanding that when they were cultivating a sense of their own power, this was a divine pursuit. This was a blessed pursuit. Now, of course, we can be very immediate about it. We can just look at it from the term of going to the gym, right? Getting your workout in, which is great. More power to you. But there are so many ways to understand that energy. There are emotional ways to understand this energy of Mars. There are psychological ways as well. Ultimately, these things become symbolic of directing one's focus and one's energy in the direction you desire to go. And with this trine of Venus and Mars, well, that direction very likely is going to be one where heart is involved in some way. That direction very likely is going to be in some way connected to how we are thinking, how we are communicating, and how we are relating to others spontaneously, immediately in the sign of Gemini, but also with an appreciation of the larger collective with the sign of Aquarius as well. Now, in a more immediate sense, right? Because you know I like to get meta, I like to talk about the myths and all of that. But where it comes to our actual lived experience, or mundane experience, we can look at this in other ways as well. There are many who've conceptualized and called Venus and Mars cosmic lovers, right? This is a phrase that goes way back. I think I remember reading a text that was written at the turn of the last century, so right around the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s. It was Evangeline Adams in one of her books. I remember her saying this, calling Venus and Mars cosmic lovers. And so this understanding and conceptualization of them goes way back. We see it in art as well. With them both in air signs, it's like love and passion especially come together. Venus and Mars were rather fascinating in myth. They just couldn't stay away from each other. No matter what was happening, they found their way to each other, and they thought at times they were being secret about it, but really everybody knew that these two just could not keep their hands off each other. When it's a trine in the sky, well, there's an ease of that expression and that connection that takes place. We're more open to it, and we are feeling as if what it is that we are wanting in terms of connection with another, they may share that feeling as well. But a lot of this passion in this case is directed towards words and mind. It's about how we're focusing and how we're thinking about a thing and how we are understanding each other. Listening to another person is a supreme act of giving love. It's love that you give to them by creating that safe space to listen, but it's also love for self to listen. It's stepping out of you being the absolute center and the only thing that matters, and remembering that you can learn something really from anybody, when you allow yourself to listen. And it is in listening that is such an important part of communication that we truly can find commonality. You look at these myths, right? For example, Mars, god of war and athletics. Every culture had a god of war who was also connected in some way to physical strength, physical prowess. cultures that didn't interact with each other at all until very recent times. Their mythologies going back millennia depicted these core archetypal stories, well documented by Joseph Campbell in his work with archetypes as well. And so this is very powerful to consider in light of the fact that Venus and Mars both are in air signs. And how is it that we are speaking in ways that fuel connections and strengthen a sense of passionate commitment? Whether that's romantic or platonic, but yeah, this might be romantic as well. I think for a lot of us out there, we may be motivated to connect with others. And I would also add, a lot of this is about the online world. That's where those mind level connections are able to take place that much more. And so I do think there's going to be a percentage of people out there, if you are open and wanting to connect with others, they'll be hitting the apps. That's very possible with this energy. And you've got that extra cosmic support for feeling like a genuine connection can be made in those spaces as well in a way that I think we will love. There is one caveat though, I will say, if you are connecting with people, for example, online, try to actually have the physical, real connection as early in this week as possible. I know I'm jumping ahead here, but I just want to give you a heads up. At the very beginning of next week, we have got Venus squaring Uranus. At the very end of next week, under the light of the new moon, we are going to have Venus meeting Saturn. All of that energy is super serious. It's like the reality is undeniable and might even be uncomfortable as well. And so at least with this week, the energy is a lot more passionate, especially in the early part of the week. And we can absolutely enjoy that and love and friendship in ways in which that ultimately magnify the best that this energy can be. Now, that isn't the only energy playing out right about now. We do have Mercury retrograde as well in the sign of Capricorn, helping us to look at and consider success differently and purpose differently as well. I recently had the chance to watch an incredible movie. Spoiler alert, the movie's called Soul. I think it's a couple years old at least. And it's an animation. It is beautiful. It is so beautiful. It's, again, spoilers coming. It's about the afterlife and what happens when we leave our bodies and all of that. And so it was so deeply moving. I think I watched it 2 times in a row. And I remember towards the end, the core understanding, right? After all this journey that, these beings go through, these souls go through, one of the main characters is very intent on finding their purpose, figuring out what they're passionate about so they can live their purpose. This becomes a big theme and sort of like the driving motivation throughout the movie, especially with the 2 main characters in it. You get to the end of the movie and it ends on this understanding after this journey that is taken by these beings, that our passions are not our purpose. It isn't that you have to love it, that's the only thing you want to do, therefore that is your purpose. Your purpose is to be present for your life. That's it. Your purpose is to live your life, to be here for it, rather than be in a space where you are living in your past or living in a possible future. Purpose is not passions. That was the key takeaway of this movie, and it was a massive light bulb moment. I actually saw this movie toward the end of my sabbatical. So we're going back to the early part of the fall when I saw this, but it stayed with me so powerfully. Yes, some of us will find a passion, but sometimes your passion isn't necessarily your work. I mean, I think about my parents. Their passion was being parents. They loved the experience of having young children. And I benefited from that without a doubt. I remember countless fairs and movies. I loved the Care Bears. I went to all the Care Bear movies with my dad. Like, that's what they were passionate about, bringing that sense of play and joy to their children. And it showed. It absolutely showed. Those are the kinds of people who should have children, I think. But of course, they had their jobs. They had to work. They had to do what was practical and in front of them to do. And that didn't mean that they didn't enjoy those experiences as well and cultivate friendships that created lightness in environments that could be monotonous as well. But yes, it is in the moment itself. The passions were being apparent, but life and what it is that you're actually here to do can only be found if you are willing to experience breath, experience that moment of just being here. It is remarkable, but it's also really freeing. And I think that's why it's part of our purpose. I mean, I contemplated this really deeply. If our purpose is to be present, it means that our purpose is also to be peaceful, to be at peace with where we are right now, whatever that may be. Our purpose is to do what we need to do to free ourselves of the judgments of where we are right now, whether we've internalized external messages or whether it is that it's us that is judging where it is that we are. To allow yourself to truly live is an act of freedom. But not only that, it is freedom that is also our purpose, what we're here to do. We've got that Mercury retrograde trine Uranus at the very beginning of the week, but it is this week that Mercury is beginning to slow right down, going direct next week. And then the following week, again, we'll trine Uranus. But because of how slowly Mercury is moving, really, in a way, this is an ongoing dance. This is energy that's going to be with us throughout this week, next week, and the week after as well. And I think that's really powerful to consider. It is our understanding of purpose connected to the sign of Capricorn, our understanding of success as we uniquely define it, connected to the sign of Capricorn, that's going to be understood very differently. And when that understanding comes, it brings with it not only the freedom that Uranus promises, but it also brings with it purpose. It brings with it the promise of change and how exciting it can be to realize that every single moment of life doesn't need to be a high, doesn't need to be so exciting, doesn't need to be a party. That it is in this moment of breath, of attention, that there is a type of joy that is truly liberating and a different type of excitement in its own. Now, at the very end of the week, it is the sun in the sign of Capricorn that is going to speak in harmony with Neptune. I love this energy for us, I have to say. That beautiful sun-Neptune energy is one of faith and cultivating faith as well. And this goes to exactly what I was just talking about. This goes to peace and purpose and having faith that where it is that you are right now is exactly where it is that you're supposed to be. That's literal, but figurative as well. It is an invitation to consider that we can have faith in our future, even if that future isn't necessarily clear to us just yet. And we can believe in ourselves, even if we feel that we haven't demonstrated whatever it is we tell ourselves is our full potential. A lot of that is just externalized messages, and we just don't need to do that to ourselves anymore. When we let that go, it's incredible what becomes possible to us. What I love about this week for us, well, let me say, I have this amazing friend, my good friend Thressa, and Thressa and I were having a conversation earlier this week about, how Carl Jung said that life is a series of crisis, chaos, and calm. crisis, chaos, and calm. It is a constant cycle that we are moving throughout a lifetime. And it is part of the wheel of life that we are meant to engage if we are going to live. Each one has its purpose and its meaning, and each one is an experience of purpose and passion and life and the divine and the mundane, all of it simultaneously. Mars can encapsulate these states so perfectly. And I think now with Mars stationary, it's like a lot of us are reaching a point of where there has been chaos. Now we're reaching a place of calm. Where we have been in crisis, we are embracing the chaos and seeing the wisdom in it and seeing how calm is within our view. It's up ahead. All we have to do is continue to take action. And sometimes that action literally is to pause, to be still, and to be okay with exactly where it is that you are. Mars going direct this week is the star of the show in the sign of Gemini. It is a light bulb moment. We will see the events that were taking place in our life in the first part of September differently in some way, with a greater depth and a greater clarity that ultimately empowers our actions. But more importantly, it becomes part of what allows us to move on that wheel of crisis, chaos, calm, and move towards ultimately calm. That is what we're aiming for until we get to the next crisis and the next chaos. But that is what it is to be alive. And that is part of the excitement, not only of this moment, but this lifetime that we have the privilege to live now. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys. And to prove it to you, here are some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs up, who hits the notification bell. I love you guys so much. Thank you. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you in your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, where you get expanded exclusive video scopes each and every week for each and every sign for as low as just $3 a month. So choose your membership rate. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University has some incredible programs happening right now. Single classes are available, whether it is medical astrology with the one and only Cameron Allen, or whether it is understanding the lunar nodes with one of our most popular teachers, the one and only Marc Laurenson, or whether it is with one of our speakers as part of the January speaker series. All of that is on offer now and available at synchronicityuniversity.com. And so it was this weekend that we had Taylor Schuler speaking on Saturn in Pisces. And that turned out to be a class that was quite popular. And, you know, she's just so brilliant. Let me just say, I love her so much. She just has this thing in her that tells me she's ready. She is a star. You just watch her rise and continue to rise. Well, you can get that talk now available for download at synchronicityuniversity.com. Coming up next weekend, we have got the one and only Wade Caves. Now, he's going to be teaching sort of a Horary Astrology 101 class, and that's going to be really insightful as well. You can sign up for that single class. It's the astrology of like answering specific questions, understanding astrology as divination as well. And so, yes, he is somebody who really is known for his skills in Horary Astrology. He's got a single class coming up, and I hope that you will join us. You can learn more, sign up about all the incredible sessions and classes happening right now at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University has a very, very special offer happening right now, this weekend only. This kicked off right around the time that this is publishing and will be active for 48 hours. Cameron Allen and Marc Laurenson have been so kind as to offer the first courses they taught with Synchronicity University at the same low choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class. So this is a very rare sort of second chance to get their first classes. With Cameron Allen, it was his first class on medical astrology. It's more foundational, even though his current class, you can take it as a standalone. Students have been saying that they would love to have even more resources available to them. And this class is wonderful to do just that. This 5-pack class is there and available for you at synchronicityuniversity.com. And it is, of course, Marc Laurenson who taught The Soul's Mission in the Birth Chart, a 5-part course, and he has been kind enough to allow us to offer that to you for that very low choose your tuition rate. And so you go to the website, you purchase it, and you get to download it right away. You get the download links automatically emailed to you, actually, in terms of how the system is set up. So there's not a lot you need to do. Just go onto the website, choose your tuition rate, and you will be able to access those classes right away and enjoy them and learn from 2 very brilliant astrologers for this weekend only, right? As we are starting this week, this is the time to fortify those foundations. Mercury retrograde, trine Uranus, the perfect time to be able to tap into this wisdom and this learning as part of strengthening your foundation to make the most of classes happening now and coming up in the future. At synchronicityuniversity.com, you can learn more and you can get your classes. Links are in the description below. And remember, 2023 special horoscopes, extended horoscopes for each sign are now in the superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, but also up and available on my website, NadiyaShah.com, available for downloads. Thank you so much to all of you who do purchase those and just support my work in that way. Have that sense of encouragement, but also enthusiasm for what it is that I have to share. So I hope you absolutely love them. I focused on a few of the big trends that I knew people were going to ask about. So I focused on things like the stuff I spoke about in the overview, right? And you can see the preview there as well in that video that is 2 hours and 11 minutes. And you know what? I actually, after the fact, I thought of even more stuff I wanted to say. So I will do that as well. I'm going to cut that Pluto in Aquarius part out and add to it. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to publish a little bit later on. But yeah, there's just so much to explore, right? But 2023 is set to be a massive year, a massively important year for a lot of us because of how these very big energies change. And it starts this week, actually. With Mars going direct, this is the first big celestial event to take place so early in the year. And it really is going to feel as if our energy has shifted, that we understand something deeply about ourselves and now are finally ready to go forward. As we go forward, it is going to be in March, of course, that we are going to have Saturn change signs. We're going to have Mars change signs, and we're going to have Pluto change signs as well. So it is March that's set to be a massive, massive month. As we navigate further, it will be Jupiter that'll change signs in the middle of May and very quickly set up a grand cross. And it's a fixed grand cross at that. Right at the beginning of fixed signs, we are going to have Jupiter and Pluto and Mars and the nodes as part of this configuration. So that may just end up being the most important moment of 2022 for so many of us out there. We're going to have a Venus retrograde as well that a lot of people are already asking me about. That is with Venus going into shadow in June. The retrograde is from July 23rd right to the first days of September, and then leaves shadow in early October. And we also have eclipses. So those are the big energies that I focus on for each of the signs. And I stay focused on that in that matter for the most part. So again, if you want to know how these really big energies are set to speak to you in your sign, you can go to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com or my website, NadiyaShah.com, and just thank you for your trust and your love. I love talking about this stuff. It's just, I feel that connection to my ancestors. When I do, something about it feels very right to me. And so to have that privilege of your trust, thank you. Just thank you so much for that. And thank you again for this moment with you. Thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy.